I think early on, I took every failure to heart. It was like, oh, I can't get this done, or why is this happening to me? I'm not meant for this.
Jose Vargas, thank you for joining the show, brother.
Will, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for making it happen.
Of course, man. Likewise.
Love to be here supporting your podcast, your new venture, and you're going to do great.
Thank you.
You're getting better by the minute doing this.
Thank you. I mean, as the audience knows, I'm learning as I go. I'm trying to be a better interviewer.
We're all doing that every day.
That's
trying
right.
to get better, learning.
That's
it
right,
never
man.
stops.
That's a daily.
Congrats.
Thank you, brother. It's a daily process trying to improve. So, man, we got a lot to talk about.
Bring it on.
I'm so excited to have you on the show just because I respect you so highly, as an entrepreneur and as a father, and you're balancing so much stuff. You're juggling so much stuff. And
a lot of balls in the air.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. So we got a lot to talk about. But I think always a great place to start is talk about your background and your upbringing and how you got into entrepreneurship. So why don't we start from scratch? Why don't we start from the beginning and your background?
Sure. So I'm originally from Venezuela. Unfortunately, it's not a country that's in the news for the right reasons. Yep. And, I was fortunate that, my family, especially my mom, encouraged me to come to the U.S., get an education, and try to basically work towards the American dream. And so I owe a lot to my mom for supporting me. And came here about 27 years ago, finished high school, moved to Miami. I went to FIU, graduated there. And, I kind of always had kind of the feeling that I wanted to have a business or be an entrepreneur. It was just the very basic idea. I didn't know what or when or how, but I think I did find that I had, let's say, the interest of doing something on my own. And I had several jobs during college, and one of them was at a local e-commerce company that was fairly big at the time. And I went in, and they gave me a job in their marketing department. At the time, 98, we're building or managing their website. And I got to learn a lot about, driving traffic to the website, buying and selling online media at the time.
Gen.
Banners, doing lead gen, learning all kinds of ways of monetizing traffic, whether, I'm buying a cost per acquisition or I'm buying per click. Google was not around at the time, or there were, but they weren't as big. I remember.
What year was this?
98.
98.
And it was basically the start of the internet.
Yeah, for sure.
.com basically industry.
Yeah, that was still like the AOL days.
Days, and I remember getting this magazine in the house called the Industry Standard, and every time I got it, there was another IPO and another .com billionaire. I'm like, wow, this is where I want to be.
That was the big bubble at the time.
That was a big bubble.
Yep.
And and just like any other bubble, the bubble burst, and I got laid off from my job, and I'm like, all right, I stepped out, but I had some friends and contacts that I've made in that company, and I remember one of the guys was the director of technology, and at the time I was just trying to figure out my next step, and I'm like, hey, it's gonna be tough finding a job right now because the bubble just burst. All the companies were shutting off. There were basically no jobs. There was a little mini recession going on at the time as well. So I'm like, I have nothing to lose basically. So I emailed my friend that was because I'm not a tech guy. I'm basically
marketer,
sales and
yep.
marketing. I understand technology now, being involved for 20 years, but I've never learned how to code or something. So I always knew, hey, I have to partner with somebody that has those complementary skills.
Yep.
And, I emailed Chris and said, hey, I have this idea, I know how to buy and sell online advertising. And I think, if we could build a little bit of technology and reporting, we could start something here. I'll do all the selling, the managing, I'll do everything, but I just need help with the technology.
And that's important. I mean, we can talk about it a little bit later also, but finding the right teammates that can have the strengths where you have weaknesses are super important, right? That's a big thing that entrepreneurs sometimes struggle with, is knowing what your weaknesses are.
Right. And it's also a learning process.
For
I mean,
sure.
Learning about yourself, it takes time, and I'm still in the middle of that.
For sure.
But the better you learn and be comfortable with who you are, the better decisions you can make. But he replies to me, said, you know what? Yeah, sure. I'll help you after work. We met at the time, Barnes and Nobles in Coral Gables.
Yep.
And, he's like, I'll join you. I'll take a little piece of equity, and, I had the rest. And, he was basically building for free for me. So, he's kind of like the first guy who basically believed in kind of like an idea that I wanted to do.
Very cool.
And, so I was working at the project full time because I had no job. So
no other choice.
It's pretty easy to be full time and it was just me at my dorm and Chris at the time, traveling. He was actually he had left that previous company, and now he was at another tech company out of San Francisco, and basically moonlighting for my project. And it took a year of knocking on doors, on, figuring out what to do, and basically getting a lot of no's. But you know what? I liked it. I now, I remember that, I could be sitting there on the computer. It was 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and I was like, just banging out emails. And, I had a fax. So I was, at the time I would, send, faxes and, soliciting for advertisers, or, trying to get a website that had traffic to be kind of like a publisher, so I could, sell their ads. So I was just selling on both ends. And it took maybe like a year and a half for the first, client to come in.
Just grinding for a year and a half.
Grinding.
Yep.
And, at the time, I wasn't even thinking any of it. At some point, you just kind of like forget.
Yeah, you just go.
Yeah, you just go. And, I'm like, it's never going to work, but I have nothing else going on. And, I liked it. Again, I felt like, online advertising was nascent, and, I felt just attracted to it. And, but, I didn't know what was going to come up.
So a year and a half to your first client.
You're right.
So
of no's and
that's amazing.
Doors and no money, no VC, no. It was just me and my laptop, and that's it.
And I think that's a super important lesson for entrepreneurs or anybody that's building a business. It takes time. No matter what you're doing, there's no such thing as an overnight success, right? You have to be at this for a while. And it helps if you're doing something that you're passionate about, because this will take multiple years until the wheel starts turning.
Yeah.
You got to be invested in it emotionally, passionately, right? Mentally.
Yeah, I think that passion keeps you going.
Yep.
And I guess, that's the way it worked for me.
Because a year and a half, if you're not passionate about the idea, a year and a half's a long time of hearing no's. You're going to be like, okay, I've done this for a year, nothing. I'm not excited about it anymore. I'm going to move on, right? But if you're passionate,
I guess that's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
I wasn't making any money. I was like basically running on fumes.
Yep.
Savings gone, no job. But I liked it, and I guess I guess the key to this is that if you're able to find that something that you're really passionate about, you'll find a way to be successful.
Yep.
So I guess start with that. Start with what really is your calling. And I feel now kind of lucky that I was able to find something that, or stumble upon something that I was really passionate about. And again, that's the fuel that, keeps you going, through the ups and downs. And I guess from so much knocking on doors, I guess, you basically you find the needle in the haystack.
Eventually the world starts to have to listen to you, right?
Right.
After knocking on so many doors.
And then a year and a half, again, from pounding on doors, I get the call back that ends up being a client, and the snowball started happening. Chris helped me a lot on how to visualize, like, hey, now we have a client, now we have revenue, let's start growing. Let's go to Home Depot and get a desk. Let's buy a phone. Let's hire somebody.
Let's legitimize this thing.
It was like, to me, it was like, but it's just been me for a year.
Yeah.
I don't even know if this was going to work. And now we're, thinking about expanding.
Yeah.
And that's the way it worked. And
which company was this? This was
Mail Creations.
Mail Creations, your first company.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, we were basically...
and for the listeners, Jose has started and sold 5 companies, is it?
Yes.
Right? Amazing, right?
So, and, I've always been based out of Miami.
Incredible.
And done it out of Miami. So, it's definitely doable and possible.
Yeah.
The company was a email marketing company. So we, one end had clients, and then on the other end had, partners that had a website with an email list, or a website that had a lot of registrations, and we would manage those email lists for them and basically monetize them. Yep. So I would sell ads on their behalf and basically have a revenue split. And after that first client, we invested the little we had in hiring, sales, adding technology, and becoming bit by bit a company. Learning about payroll, how it works. There are taxes. How does this?
Right. What's a W-9?
Yeah. What's a 1099?
Right, exactly.
What's how do taxes work?
Sure.
And QuickBooks? I didn't know any. I mean, and I graduated with a business degree. I had absolutely no idea.
Yep.
Zero of how to run a business. I remember that at some point, I had a stack this big of invoices and a stack this big of payables, and that was our accounting system.
That was the accounting.
And at one point I get to the office, I'm like, hey, it's not gonna work.
Right, it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. Let's try to find a CPA that can help us with this. And I put out an ad, and this lady comes for the interview, and she's like, okay, so what are you guys doing? And what what's the status? How can I help? And I just opened my drawer,
showed her exactly,
took the papers, put it on the desk, and literally she stood up crying. She left. She's like, there's no way.
So that was a learning experience on how not to offer someone a job. Right?
But you know what? I think she felt bad. Turned around, came back, and to this day we're still working together.
Amazing. That's amazing. What's her name?
Denia.
Yeah. All right. Shout out to Denia.
Yeah, Denia. Thank you very much. You changed my life. Thank you for turning back, and she's still working for us.
Incredible.
And but that was my accounting system. Amazing. Papers here and papers there.
Amazing. So now Mail Creations is up and running, and it's moving.
Yeah, and and it was a constant learning experience.
Sure.
All these basic things that I didn't know from accounting, from sales, from contracting. I had to do it all.
Absolutely.
I had to print payroll checks, and at the time, I remember calling my CPA, calling in the payroll, and I had to basically write down the taxes.
Yep.
I would print the checks live, and then I would go to the bank to deposit the tax payroll.
Crazy.
I mean, this was
very makeshift.
It was, and it's only 20 years ago, and I was just doing all this manual.
That's how you learn, right?
And again, I mean, I was young, I had nothing else, and I was there 7 days a week. I was the first guy in, then the last guy out. Actually, and we kept on growing. We had a lot of ups and downs. The company grew fast, like 100% year over year, and we're profitable. And we got good at working with agencies and clients like mortgage companies and credit card companies, and we kept growing, and we expanded services to providing more database services where we would drive online registrations, and we would add signals like, hey, this is a person, it's a Hispanic or Asian, and then we would work with credit reporting agencies where we would append addresses, physical addresses, and then we had like phone and email, and started building more like a database
into
product
segments and things
as
like
well as the email marketing. And we had all the ups and downs. At one point I remember that I was in the office, and the whole team that we had at the time, the sales team, quit the same day. They all talked with each other and said, we're out, because and I was just sitting there again. It was like ups and downs. You go through a lot of things that you have to go through. But like I said, I mean, I think that the same passion and you become kind of like in autopilot.
For
it's
sure.
Like a lot of things happening. All these things have all these things being thrown at you, and I guess you just keep going. You become numb and keep going. But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of commitment. It starts with that passion, because that's what keeps you going. I mean, I don't think I ever worked as hard as I did then, because I was 7 days a week.
7 days. Even the weekends you were in the office.
I was single. I had nothing else to do. So I'm like, hey, I had to catch up on work. I had to either do payroll or answer to clients or, work on a presentation. And I have nothing else to do at home. So I would just go to the office and work every day, Saturday, Sunday, and Mondays, and, the whole day. And I remember one time a guy that we had there asked me, hey, do you ever go home? Because, every time I come, you're here. When I leave, you're here. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of feels like it. But
you set precedent. You set an example as the leader of the company.
Yeah, I felt like I had to, at the time was more like, hey, I have to be there. And again, I was learning about how to manage people, which is never easy. I'm still learning. Absolutely. And it was just a wonderful, going back, a learning experience. It was not easy at all. No. I mean, a lot of ups and downs, and every day seemed like you were stepping on like
landmine.
Quicksand. It's like you would either lose a client, or the servers went down, or something.
Always something.
It was always something. I mean, it was never felt like it was always a challenge. But again, now looking back, it was probably the best learning experience I had.
The priceless education, right?
All education.
And you can't pay for this type of education. You can only learn by doing.
And that's the only way.
There's this Reid Hoffman quote that entrepreneurship is like jumping out of the airplane and building, jumping off a cliff and building the airplane on the way down.
That's exactly how it feels.
And that's you need to develop the thick skin and fortitude to get through those tough times, right? Because there will be more tough days than easy ones when you're building a business.
Totally.
When I started my company, I mean, I had to grow that thick skin. I had to grow that resilience in that stomach, right? Yeah. And there were so many instances where the shit hit the fan, and
Always
things seem to be falling apart. Investors wouldn't come around. Employees would we'd hire them and then they would quit based because there wasn't a fit, cultural fit, or a number of other reasons.
Yeah.
You would lose a customer, a big customer that you were counting on, right? Have payroll issues. That's the life, right?
That's the life of an entrepreneur.
I think you start and you're like, holy shit, this is hard. But I think you need to flick the switch as an entrepreneur and be like, okay, this is what the job demands. And what I equated it to was, that feeling at the gym when you go to the gym and you lift weights and you start to feel that burn, and that's pain, but you do that and you embrace the pain because you know that that's making you stronger.
Right.
I'm through this pain, I'm being stronger. And there's a mental shift that you make that you're getting stronger. So you do it, you go through pain. And I feel like you can flick the switch as an entrepreneur also and just stop feeling the pain and just realize every single issue and every single obstacle is an opportunity for growth.
Totally. Right? And that's I would say a huge epiphany. If you are able to flip the switch and say, this, thing that's happening right now, it's really bad, it's ugly. Mm-hmm. And, you could say, why is this happening to me? Yep. And become frustrated or say, look, this is happening and it's pretty bad. Mm-hmm. And it's what's part of the game. Yep. What can I learn from it? What am I doing wrong that's actually causing this to happen so you can become better? Because that's evolution. Being an entrepreneur is at the end of the day evolving, and getting better every day. But making the mistakes, going through the pain is what makes you evolve.
For sure.
Not going through the ups all the time, because that there's no learnings in the ups. But in business you have all these ups and you have these downs. But you have to learn how to balance that.
Can never get too high and not get too low, right?
But again, the day you have that epiphany saying, why is this happening to me? And you take it as a learning opportunity, as a catalyst to change mm-hmm. your approach or change the biases that you have, that's the day you become like a master Yoda.
Yep.
Because you're basically interacting with the reality, with what's happening in another mindset, with another level of mindset. And it took me a long time to get there.
For an example of this, right? You were talking about the sales team. One day you go to your office and the whole sales team all quit on you, right?
Yeah.
So in that moment, you could either be like, holy shit, like this is a big problem, or you could be like, okay, this is a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
I might have done something wrong as a leader. What did I do? You look internally and try to course correct. You ask yourself objectively, you try not to get too high or too low, right?
Right. But yeah, I mean, that is just an example.
Right.
I mean, there are things like that happening on a daily basis.
You're putting out fires every day.
It never stops. If somebody tells you that otherwise, then they're not. They're not.
They're not in the thick of it. They're not a real operator.
Not an entrepreneur. They're not. In the grind of creating value.
Yeah.
By building a company. So that. And again, it's just all learning.
For sure.
I'm fortunate that I was able to participate in this opportunities, and like I said, there's nothing, like you said, like practice to really learn and get better at something.
Nice. So I would also want to talk about M&A and selling companies, right? Because now you've sold 5 companies.
Yeah.
So Male Creations, how long were you operating the company before you sold it?
Yeah. So let's say we started it sometime in 1999, mm-hmm. and we sold it in June 2004.
Okay. So about 5 years.
Yeah, about 5 years. Look, I didn't know anything about M&A.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked at the news and this company is getting acquired, and this merger, and it felt like something I would wanted to have an opportunity to experience, but
mm-hmm.
I had no knowledge on that. And at the time, in 2004, a few companies that were kind of like in my space, email marketing, database marketing,
mm-hmm.
were being acquired or some had gone IPO'd early, so there was some M&A activity. And also at the time was companies started internet started coming back alive, like the models that really did work and were real businesses, like Google, for example. Google, when they IPO'd in 2004, so things started to open up again. And since we were bootstrap company, we were profitable from the beginning, and we were again growing, and we're also like in the middle of this email marketing, database marketing vertical that had some interest. So we had a banker from New York. I never heard of him, didn't know what a banker was. Contact me and said, hey, I'm doing some work in the space. I would love to represent you. And I'm in New York, but I'll be there tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah.
So it's an investment banker.
An investment banker.
So just for the audience listening, acquisitions can happen a number of ways. Sometimes the potential acquirer hunts out a company. Sometimes it goes the other way, where the company is looking to get sold, and it looks at potential acquirers that could be a fit. In the case of an investment banker, they go around looking for companies where they could play matchmaker, essentially, right?
Right. And what they run a process,
right.
And the guy came into my office, wearing a suit and a tie and expensive suitcases. I'm like sitting there in my t-shirt, and I'm like, hey, if this guy really wants to work with us, I mean, he must know something that I don't know.
Yep.
But it wasn't as easy for him or for us. So, since it was, again, a learning experience, we had to learn, how the company gets organized, like, from an accounting perspective. And, at the time we had, our financials in QuickBooks and stuff like that. But not only that, but, how to present the company, and, what's the future? What are the projections, models, and, what's ahead 2 to 3 years, and be able to communicate that, and prepare the company for the process, management presentations and decks and things like that. And like I said, brand new to me. But we went through the process. They stuck with us. We stuck with them. And by the way, the banker's still my friend, a fantastic friend of mine. And, after all these years, we're still, in touch.
Amazing.
And by the way, it was a failed process. It took a year. We got close. And it was very emotional. It was very taxing, because you get somebody interested, you do all the process, the presentations, the dog and pony show, the due diligence, and you feel like the airplane is really taking off, and that you're close to getting a deal done. But guess what? Negotiations fall through, or you didn't get into a price. So we went through a lot of ups and downs. And at some point, basically, you could say that the process had failed. We had some offers. The offers fell through for X or Y reason, and everybody was tired. I think the bankers were tired, and we were tired, because we had taken time off the company, and when that happens and you're a small company, things start, the wheels start coming off. So it was a tiring process. And to give you a long story short, I was sitting there on a Sunday reading a book by Richard Branson, Losing My Virginity, or something like that. Still have the book at home. And in one of the chapters, he mentions how he had Virgin Music or something, and he ended up selling it to a Japanese corporation, and how much fun he had going to Japan, and he made so much money because he sold it in yen, and then the pound devalued in a matter of weeks, and so when they brought the money back, he made even more in like it was just like a fantastic deal for him. And I'm like, hey, I would also love to have that opportunity. I want to deal with Japanese. I love Japan. So one of our agencies in Spain was owned by a Japanese corporation. And I'm like, hey, let me check that out on a Sunday. And I go to the Japanese corporation website. It was all in Japanese. I couldn't understand, what it said or anything. But I know they were big. They were public. So basically, I was going through the links on the page with the, like scrolling through the page, and there was something that says IR, investor relations. So I clicked there, and I just emailed the contact form there. I said, hey, we're a company in the U.S. We're growing. We're in the performance marketing space, email marketing, database marketing, and we're running an M&A process. I heard from my agency that you've done a lot of acquisitions. Would you like to basically speak to our bankers? That was the email.
Unbelievable.
That basically changed my life.
That's
and
crazy.
Me and my friends. And on Monday, I had a response.
Wow.
From the guy who ends up acquiring my company like 3 months after.
Oh my God.
Who we're still friends, by the way.
So just a cold email.
A cold email from a book.
Unbelievable.
So never underestimate the power of books, because they can change your life from one day to the next.
So if you wouldn't have read that Richard Branson book, wouldn't have sparked the idea.
Never.
Incredible.
Never. You never know how dots are going to connect themselves. And in the process, there are also a lot of things that happened, but we don't have the time. But that's the email that changed my life.
Crazy,
because
man.
I read the book. I'm like, it's probably fun. I want to go to Japan.
Yeah.
The email got answered on a Monday. We probably met in New York a few weeks then. We had a deal, and he closed, and he changed my life.
You got to take your shot, right?
Yeah.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take in life. Right?
To this day, I can't explain it. So we went from a failed process to a successful M&A process that gave me that experience of running a process, and it never ends, right? You still learn, but absolutely changed my life. I went from just trying to make ends meet to finally have some capital to invest, it's definitely a very emotional time, because it's kind of like, wow, worked so hard for this, and you feel like you got this reward. It's also very it has a side of uncertainty, because you don't know, okay, what's next.
You've associated yourself with this company. It's your identity. 7
days a week was there. So it's kind of like, what happens next? What am I gonna do next? At the time I was only 24, and I was now starting to think, wow, is this the only company that I'm going to be able to build? And now I have, decades ahead of, hopefully of life. And, will I be able to do it again? What am I going to do? I don't know what to do with my life. So you have the good, the good part, the learning, the process, living through it, changing, your life. And I'm to this day, absolutely grateful to LiveDoor and Aki, the guy who responded that email, who we're still friends with. Amazing. Because changed my life and the life of a bunch of other people with that opportunity. But it has also the side of the uncertainty. What did just happen? Did I just get lucky? What am I gonna do next? I mean, you have all these feelings, so it's kind of like, but But in the other end, you want to be able to experience that again, and I guess that's what keeps driving you to the next and to the next and to the next. I guess I guess it's like a shot of dopamine. You want you go for a run and you feel good, and you want that, or coffee for that matter. You feel like you want it again, and that's basically. But again, a lot of feelings, emotions, from the downs of having a failed process to, hey, now we have an opportunity to, hey, now the a closed deal that really changes your life. But then you need time to digest and keep growing personally and figure out next steps. But again, to me, it was a fantastic opportunity that I'm very thankful for.
That's awesome. And the running is a great example, right? You run and you get that dopamine, that runner's high.
Yeah.
And the run could be difficult, right? You've never run that distance before.
Yeah.
And then the next day, you're looking for that runner's high again, that shot of dopamine, but then you end up running a better run. You know how to make the run. You know how to not go all out of the gate. You do a certain pace, and you just get better and better each time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to that effect, I mean, proof's in the pudding. You've now sold 5 companies, started and sold, right?
Yeah.
So you have this process down of starting companies and figuring out the trajectory and the horizon of starting and exiting the company. Now, when you start companies now, do you look and think about, okay, here's the plan. I want to start this company. I want to run it for 3 to 5 years, and I want to look for a potential acquisition, or do you start it without that in mind, and then you just kind of go year by year and try to figure out what's best for it?
I wish, the answer would be more in the sense like, you know, I had this clear vision and this exactly what I want to do. It never happens that way. I think how we've gone through, from, a company and then starting another one is again, that feeling of, I want to do this again. I want to be able to going through this, process, learning process. It basically starts as simple as saying, hey, I kind of like this, maybe doing something in this space, or somebody brought you an opportunity that you kind of liked, or you liked the partner, and again, it starts from the passion of wanting to do something, and I guess you start putting the dots together, but it's probably not, you don't have a precise vision. You're basically, like you said, you keep jumping out of the plane without a plan.
Right.
So from the first day, things start changing, and the trajectory starts changing, and the vision and the opportunities and things like that. It's an animal. It's it's a very it's got its own life to it once you go into basically the jungle. But again, the passion of wanting to get the feeling of the learning, you first attach yourself to, hey, I want to start a company. This is what I think that I want to do. It takes twists and turns and pivots and things like that. But I think what you become better at is at understanding that it's an evolution, a process that's going to take you between twists and turns. So I think what you become better at is at not being so reactive, or being, saying, hey, let me look at what's happening. Let me understand what decisions can be made. But I don't think you just have like a clear vision. I mean, you see guys like Jeff Bezos or Google guys that, have a clear vision, and it worked out. It worked out. To me, it's been more like, hey, let's do something, and it just changes and goes and things like that. And it evolves, and that's kind of like what my experience has been. Awesome.
So let's fast forward into what you're doing now. You started healthcare.com, right? You're working in the healthcare space. Tell listeners really quick, what is healthcare.com and why you're really excited about the space right now.
Yeah, so healthcare.com helps people or individuals buy, compare and buy health insurance and Medicare plans. And we've basically grown through just being a comparison tool for all the plans that are available for the private individuals, to now acquiring the lights went off, and we're not even in California.
That's crazy. Okay.
Thank God we have these lights on.
Right? These are battery powered. All right, we're back. We're back with part 2. I don't know if
and the lights are on.
The lights are on. So you guys who are watching the podcast on YouTube, by the way, our podcast is on YouTube if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or your favorite podcast station. we were having a great conversation. We were filming this episode, and then all of a sudden, lights went out. Right?
Yeah, and we're not even in California.
So that was crazy. We were having a good conversation, and then all of a sudden the whole power went out in the building, and that cut the episode short. So that's a good lesson in just rolling with the punches, right?
Yep.
We were talking about that in the episode. When you're an entrepreneur, you never know what's going to happen. You just got to take it and run with it.
Yeah, that makes it fun.
Exactly. So what we were talking about before we lost power was just going through the M&A process, starting and selling companies, and you started and sold 5 now. So was wondering if there's like some kind of formulaic process that you have in your mind now that you've experienced this over and over. Do you have a formula in mind when you sit down to start a new venture, when you're like, all right, I kind of know how this goes. I know what it takes to start a company. I know what it takes to sell a company. Do you have a process in mind where you're like, okay, I'm going to run this for 3 to 5 years and then look for an exit? Or is every company its own thing and its own individual thing, and you can't really kind of compare?
I in my case, I think each company has been a desire to start something, to create something, again, out of the passion for, building a company and creating value. So
that has to come first.
That's first,
Sure.
And in my case, I think it's been, I've focused more on, kind of like what I was interested at the time, like initially with Milk Creations, I was, very interested in learning and being involved in anything that had to be around online advertising and marketing and email marketing. I just felt drawn to it, and that's what focused my energy into building that. Eventually, that grew into a company, into a team, into basically an organization that grew. And as we said before, I exited to a Japanese corporation, and then after that, the other companies kind of have been the same. We've looked at certain opportunities, or we've have some background on some new vertical that's coming up, and that drives your interest, and that's how we've started other companies. Like we started a payments company called Blue Kite, and for me at the time was just looking at everything that was happening in fintech and wanting to be a part of it, and I remember saying, hey, I really want to be part of this fintech world. I had no idea what was going to be the kind of like the business model, or how was everything is going to come together, but I'm taking some action right now. So I went out and looked for a name. I found it, bluekite.com, bought it for like $4,000. And, I had the initial steps. And then it was more of, talking to friends or my partners and saying, hey, I have an idea, fintech, maybe we can loan money online and do that for Latin America. Obviously, just like your initial idea never worked, so you kind of pivoted, and then we ended up doing kind of like a payments corridor in Central America, for people to pay the bills online and top up their cell phones, and that's what we ended up doing. But again, it was just the desire to be part of that, what was happening on fintech, and eventually, we grew the company, grew the organization, build the technology, build value, to a point where we were able to sell it to Zoom, which is the remittance arms of PayPal, after like 15, 18 months of building the company. So we had a great outcome. We never envisioned that outcome. We basically did not even envision what the ending product was going to be. But again, it was just a desire to be part of that vertical or industry, or kind of like finance is changing, technology is changing finance. There is pockets of opportunities to solve problems. We focused on Central America, which is an area where we have some expertise, and it worked out well. But awesome. Again, it's just the initial desire or the passion to create something in a specific vertical for us.
Yeah, I love what you just said there, because I think the best companies do start organically. They start with like you're intrigued by a certain space or providing a solution, and then it's a methodical, organic process day by day, how it unfolds. I think like you see a lot of entrepreneurs try to put out exit strategies before they even started the company. Like I've literally seen pitch decks, and the investors, I think some investors are at fault also because they want to hear what's your exit strategy. And it's almost like a test question for the entrepreneur and like how they're thinking about, okay, if I'm going to give you $1 million, how am I going to get that money out? So it's like a test question, but you end up with all these assumptions, right? And false hypotheses about how you're going to do it and when, and then almost you have to force that narrative down the line, right? It's not the right way to do it.
No, it's at least for me, it's never worked out that way. I mean, and I guess that for me, the exit strategy is actually more surviving. Because as an entrepreneur, you're waking up every day and the floor is shifting under you. You're walking in quicksand. So again, if you're at least have the passion to be in a vertical and you already recognize a problem that's, big enough to solve and, that again brings value to the end consumer. And that to me is the sense of urgency. Are we building that value? Are we creating value to the consumer, to society? And not really caring about the exit because in some ways the only way you can control is how you execute and the building blocks that you're putting together, but at the end of the day you don't know how everything is going to fall into place. So never know what an exit will be like or when will it come or.
It's hard to design for that.
Totally.
I believe it was Mark Suster. I forget the name of his venture capital firm. I think it's Upfront Capital or something like that. Very well-known guy out in Los Angeles. I think he did a blog post or he posted on his Instagram, I forget, about how to run a successful M&A process in his experience. And he brought up an interesting point, which I found to be true when I was selling my company, was never talk to corp dev. Corp dev, who is usually the hire in the company or the department of the company that is meant to look for strategic acquisitions, they're there for a reason. They report to the CEO, but very rarely in his experience did you ever get a deal done by just dealing with corp dev the entire time. Usually corp dev's job is to go out there and be on the offense for opportunities. They're almost like a sales team. They're just like looking for ops and leads in potential things that can be a tuck in or, makes sense from an acquisition standpoint to that company. He makes the argument that, or rather the point that if you really want to sell your company, there's 3 people that you should be talking to. Usually it's either the VP of product, because your product or your company has some kind of proprietary technology that they don't. The VP of sales, because usually in a case maybe your product has some kind of new feature or something that could generate more revenue for the company. Also a CFO could do that as well. Or the CEO of the company, because all of the above can be wrapped under the CEO. And usually the VP of marketing or the head of the VP of sales or the VP of product will lobby to the CEO why they need this in their team, why they need this sales team, why they need this proprietary technology because they can't build it fast enough. And usually, in Mark's case, he found that corp dev is usually a waste of time. That if you really want to sell your company, you target the product team or the sales team or the C-level team. Did you find that in your experience, or did you have good experiences with corp dev, or did you talk more to high-level people?
I think in my experience, it's been more of a consensus. I think it does, if you're talking to a strategic, right, because you already have a business relationship or a marketing relationship or, some type of partnership, you're dealing with the execution guy on the other side who could be like the VP of marketing product, or the biz dev guy or whatever. And, if they basically see an opportunity, they will help you build consensus, right? And that's a way in, right? Another way in
building consensus. That's a great point. That's key. That's key.
Yeah,
right?
because at the end of the day, especially if you're dealing the buyer is a public company, and even if it's a founder-led company, they are going to be listening to the other guys on the team.
You have to have a champion, right?
Yeah, you have to have a champion, and you usually, if you have a guy on your side that's vetted what you're doing, and they see a strategic fit, I'm sure it's gonna help. Building the consensus with the corp dev guy or all the way up to the CEO. I think in our case, I've seen that a lot where you go into a company and maybe your contact there is through the CEO, for example, but then he brings in the other key parts of the business that are either running a division or running a piece of the business where you think there are synergies, and then he says, you kind of make a presentation to the group, and that you've got a deal if the operating guys see the synergies, because then they'll go to the CEO and say, hey, this is why we have to do it. And once they kind of become your partners, because then they have the CEO's ear, and then if they kind of can bring the rationale to the CEO, then it's easier because he can say, we're doing this. We're getting this deal done. No matter how many skeletons come out or how the negotiations go, you kind of build consensus, and then they build commitment in doing the deal. So I think there are different ways that you can approach the company, right? I mean, if you have a banker that's running a process, most likely they'll go to the corp dev guy who. If the description is more of like an M&A guy, he's going to be looking for M&A. So if he, sees what the synergies are, he'll bring it up, then he'll bring the operating guys, and that's how it's going to work. But I mean, I guess there are many ways of getting that intro, but then, you have to find a way to build consensus. If you are in a meeting and the only guy there is a corp dev guy, that means that probably there is not a lot of interest.
Right. Because the corp dev guy, that's his or her job is to look at opportunities. So it's harder for any particular company to stick out to the CEO to be like, okay, there's 30 companies that you're looking at. Why this one? It's harder to build that consensus through corp dev, but if you build it elsewhere,
I think you can, have those conversations with a corp dev guy, maybe have a conversation, see where it's going. But if you don't see the conversation transitioning to the larger group, then that the guy's kind of more like gatekeeper, or he's like, there's nothing here, or but I mean, like, either go through him, or if you have already some type of work relationship with the operating guy, that's definitely a way to build consensus, because you have to have a way to, as a group, build a case for the acquisition.
Absolutely. I mean, to all the entrepreneurs listening, you have to understand the weight and the importance of what Jose just said. Literally $1 million advice that you just gave right here about how to sell a company. Again, basically, selling a company is a sales process, right? And you have to conduct it as such. And again, building that consensus and making sure you're talking to the right people will make all the difference in if you're successful in selling your company or not. And you don't want to waste your time talking to people that don't have influence in the greater boardroom to build that consensus, right? So make sure you're talking to senior level people that have the ear of the CEO and the CFO that can really articulate, and make sure you articulate to them so that you can have an ally in that company, articulate exactly why your company is a fit for the acquiring company, right? So many people, I feel like they try to sell their company, they try to position it away, and then they let it go like almost like independently. They're not involved in the process with the partner that's internal, and you can make it more of an integrated process, right? You can work with that person to get the deal done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's acquisitions are pretty material for any company, right? So, or any size. So yeah, I mean, you gotta talk to the right guys and make sure it's high level, because a manager or something like that, might help you get intros and things like that. But it's pretty material. I mean, you wanna be discussing this with the decision makers.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak from personal experience. When we were selling our company, we had a few people come inbound to us to say, hey, we'd like to buy you guys. And as an entrepreneur, I mean, that's there's a lot of days where you're feeling real crappy, But then there are the potential acquisition days that everything feels
wakes you up, right?
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
whoa, yeah.
Oh my God, man, you have new life.
Got something.
New life. And so we one of the first companies that came inbound to us was a very well-known company here in South Florida, really exciting technology that we would have loved to be a part of. I mean, it's saying all the right notes. I was super excited about it. But the person that came inbound and that came to the office to meet with everyone was a manager. He was a middle manager, maybe some seniority, but definitely not enough to drive all the influence needed. But he came into the office and he got the entire team excited, man. Let me tell you about the partnership and what it could be if our teams joined forces. And he spun my wheels too, because I bought into it. Again, I didn't know the first thing about running an M&A process. I was learning as I go. And it was like a 2-3 month process, and then naturally it unfolds. Sorry, this is not something we're pursuing. Why? I thought it was a done deal. I was told by him it was a done deal.
Yeah.
Just no, the parameters didn't work out, and that's a clear sign that he wasn't able to build consensus, nor did he have the political capital needed internally to do so.
Right.
But I feel like he wanted to show us that he did for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems to me that the guy definitely had good intentions, and he saw the fit and the synergies, and most likely he tried to build the case internally, but then at a higher level, he got shut down. But yeah, I mean, you have to be conscious about that, like where to spend your time, and how much time or an effort you put into all these conversations. But
and I was worried about it, when we eventually did successfully sell our company. I mean, it just felt different right from the get-go because it was C-level immediately, and it was an inbound conversation, and the whole tonality of the conversation was different. So definitely a learning process. The points you made are outstanding. So I hope everybody listening to that, takes notes and takes that to heart when they are going through an M&A process. So let's transition now into what you're currently doing.
Yep.
You're running healthcare.com, amazing domain. And first of all, how did you get the domain name healthcare.com? Because that's an incredible one. Can you tell us a story about that?
Yeah. So this was back in 2006.
Yeah.
And actually, I wasn't the one that initially acquired the domain. My current partner, actually acquired the domain. We had sold our companies, and then a banker contacted Matthias and said, "Hey, I have this domain for sale, healthcare.com, and you guys should buy it because healthcare is like 20% of the US GDP, and you have all these billion-dollar companies. You could build the next WebMD." And he went out and bought the domain.
Nice.
And we started working together, and initially the idea was, we're gonna build a WebMD like site, and that's what we set off to do basically in 2007. So it's been a while since we owned the domain.
So you immediately bought the domain, and then you started looking into the space for like what opportunities are exciting, how could we frame the site, what values can we provide, et cetera.
So we initially followed that WebMD type of
that model. Yep.
And we went out and basically licensed a bunch of medically reviewed content. We had like a provider directory, a medical encyclopedia, drug encyclopedia, and we had a symptom checker, and we had all the goodies for basically to build a WebMD type of site. And then we thought, hey, just like them, we'll have the content and build a site and build it and they'll come, and we'll monetize it or whatever.
Everybody's hope.
Yeah. But we did not know a lot about the vertical, about the industry. We didn't have kind of like the agency relationships to sell media to like pharmaceutical companies that are the ones that are buying all the media for those big sites.
Yep.
And we couldn't also drive traffic to it in a profitable way. We thought, hey, we've got the content, it'll come, but medical review content, basically everybody has the same content, so it was hard for us to get SEO traction, and then we we're basically running out of money, right? Money and time. And, in 2007, kind of like the collapse of the financial system started. So we're like, the water was actually, starting to come up, and we're like, hey, we don't have a model here. We basically, should, have to shut down all the content because really expensive content. I mean, we're talking about, millions, and, we couldn't monetize it. And, we said, we got to pivot. We have to look at a new model. And, we didn't have the answer right there and then. We were trying a few things, and, we found we started looking at the insurance vertical, in this case, health insurance, and, learning, kind of like, what are the players? You have like a bunch of companies that are, carriers, and you had, comparison sites and lead aggregators. And then you had a lot of traffic, organic sites, kind of like, building a publisher network, which is, what we've done before. And so we decided to build a performance network for insurance. And that was the beginning of what became Brokers Web. And in 2008, we actually were able to acquire a website that had traffic, had really high SEO rankings in driving health insurance leads. And we bought it, and we built technology around it. We went out and started generating client relationships and traffic relationships. Generating our own traffic. SEM, SEO, affiliate marketing, and then we started expanding into that vertical. We learned about health insurance, and then we went into Medicare, and then life, and then we went into property and casualty, home and auto insurance being the big one.
Nice.
And the company, took off. We built the right technology, we built the right client base, we built the right traffic acquisition strategies, and we had a lot of feedback from clients, so we got data on a daily basis. So we're getting better at driving traffic on a daily basis based on quality. And healthcare.com eventually became Brokers Web. Healthcare became kind of like a site, for Brokers Web, and we grew the company to 100 million run rate. In 4 years.
Crazy.
So, it was a very good ride for us to see kind of like a company scale that fast, and, to revenues of 100 million. So it was a good, experience. And, the company was based here in Midtown Miami, and, headquartered here. And eventually the company was acquired in September of 2011.
This being Brokers Web.
Brokers Web, yeah.
So you sold Brokers Web, you said in 2011.
Yeah.
And then how did the next iteration of healthcare.com come about?
Yeah. So when as part of the negotiations, we actually carved out healthcare.com out of the Brokers Web deal. We are like...
Good move. It worked out.
Yeah. Buy the company, the technology, the team, the clients, everything. But, we want to keep healthcare.com. We said, we didn't believe that it was getting the value that it deserved. And, we kind of thought that in the future, we probably ended up doing something with it.
And you're talking about you carved out just the domain name. Basically.
Yeah. So we kept we carved out the domain, so we kept ownership of the domain, and we sold Brokers Web. And then we had like a 3-year non-compete for insurance and what have you. And in the meantime, not to confuse a lot, but in 2011, so we had that exit. We already had exits from before Brokers Web, and with my partners, we decided to start a kind of like a technology holding company called People Fund. People mistake it for a fund, but it's actually not. We, we don't have LPs. It was just kind of like a holding company that, friends and family started. And the idea for People Fund was to invest in early stage tech companies, kind of like your Silicon Valley,
right,
and then incubate our own companies.
Yep.
Where again we have an idea, we want to kind of like execute on the idea. We funded it, we build the technology, and either partner with a management team or grow it. And so we started People Fund, and then we started basically investing in seed companies, and then building companies out of the People Fund umbrella. And one of those companies was Blue Kite, which we just talked about. That's now part of PayPal. We started a broker's web-like performance technology company, but not in insurance. We did it in automotive called AutoWeb, and that company ended up merging with a publicly traded company in 2015, and now we're basically the largest shareholders of that company.
Amazing.
The company used to be called AutoBytel, and then we basically changed the name when we merged. And other companies that we built, like my partner Diego owns a company that exchanges like loyalty points for e-commerce purchases called Iguama, and then at the end of 2014, basically 3 years after our non-compete, we were looking and kind of like brainstorming what to do with healthcare.com, and we met with a couple of friends from the industry, from the Brokers Web days, through basically some contacts, we ended up meeting the chairman of the Priceline Group, Jeff Boyd, who used to be the CEO. And we got a meeting with him and his partners, and he told us that prior to going into Priceline, he used to be in healthcare at a company called Oxford Health Plans, and they were interested in started something with us, and building healthcare.com originally as a consumer destination to help them compare health insurance and Medicare plans.
Like a kayak, basically.
Like a kayak for health insurance and Medicare.
Yep.
And they own kayaks. So we can use the name kayak without paying them a royalty.
Love it.
So we ended up partnering with them. They invested in our seed round. And basically that's the start of healthcare.com. I originally was basically my role was more of like a director, and then as the company grew and it got more complex, then I joined as a day-to-day operator of the companies, taking more and more of my time. And I really like the challenge. I really like the company, the team that we built, and ultimately what we're solving. We're basically, our mission is to help consumers find the right health insurance or Medicare plan, and help them buy the plan in an easier way. And so we really like the value that we're providing.
Definitely. It's a great website. I encourage people to check it out if you're looking for healthcare. They have a great user interface. It's super clean, looks very modern, which the insurance industry is definitely not. So you bring a nice accessibility to healthcare. So I encourage you, if you're listening, check out healthcare.com if you're looking for a new plan. You recently raised a new round of capital, right? Congratulations.
Thank you. 18
million Series B, big round of funding. You guys are based here in Miami.
We're in Miami,
right?
So, in Midtown.
Yeah, right in Midtown.
You know where
of course I do.
You know where my office is.
Yeah, for our listeners here listening, and for our Miami entrepreneurs, the thought is you can't raise venture capital here in Miami. Well, you're proving that to be wrong. Tell me about the process and your new investors and about the round. Any info that you could share about how the whole round came together? Yeah.
I mean, we're pretty transparent. So like if you see our Inc. magazine or whatever, we post our revenue. So I mean, the company's grown pretty fast. I mean, it's a vertical that we come from. So we had contacts, we had industry relationships. We kind of like we brought in the team back together. Partners that been working together for a decade
Yep.
in some cases, or our CTO has been with us for 20 years.
Yeah.
So
That makes it easier.
Yeah. So we did maybe 5 million of revenue the first year, and in 4 years we're already in 50 million run rate, and the company's been profitable. We in 2018 we were able to the first business basically was just a advertising driven business. Users went to the site, they looked for the plan.
Yep.
We gave them a list of plans, and we connected them to our clients, carriers, brokers, e-brokers, agents that are selling those plans, and we get kind of like a referral fee. And we connect about 2 million people per year.
Wow.
That are looking for health insurance and Medicare. And then in 2018, we always had a plan to go closer to the consumer, going from the kayak-like model to more like a booking.com model, where we're actually selling something to a consumer, owning that relationship and going full circle.
And underwriting, right? Or no?
Yeah. In some ways.
Yep.
But in 2018, we had that opportunity. We acquired a specialty insurance company called Pivot Health. And Pivot Health is basically a direct-to-consumer insurance company that's asset light. Asset light meaning that they partner with a carrier, they partner with a reinsurer, but they build their own benefit plans, they do their own actuary, they do their own filing and pricing, and then we sell those plans via our websites or through agents and brokers. And we bought the company. We replatformed, rebuilt the technology, added our online marketing expertise, and we were able to grow the premiums by 10x in that first year that we acquired the company.
Nice.
And do that while doing that business profitably. So we're basically growing fast, but in a profitable, responsible, conservative way. So basically with healthcare.com, we validated that, we can drive a lot of, consumers with intent that are looking to buy health insurance. Then we validated that we could, acquire a specialty technology driven and focused, insurance company that, provides a very important service to the consumer, which is, if you get sick, we pay your claims. And I think the first year we paid over $30 million in claims. That's a big amount.
For sure.
So the system works and it does what it's supposed to do.
So, and this is where the round came into play, right? This new round.
So, and so basically we put those two pieces together, and then the last piece for us was to actually have a better way to, offer the consumer the right plan that's not necessarily ours. So that means basically being more like a broker, have a broker model, which needs kind of having licensed agents in a call center or a virtual call center type that's licensed, that's regulated, that's compliant. But, bring that into a online first type of experience. So we wanted to bring consumers online to our site, which is what we do, and then build in that funnel per se a agent engagement within the online funnel, so that if somebody has a question or wants to talk to somebody, having that person in our call center or contact center be able to talk to the consumer and offer them not only our own proprietary plans, but the plan that best fit their personal needs. That in a lot of cases not going to be our own proprietary plans. So the way we look at the business right now is kind of like three buckets. We have the healthcare.com comparison tool, which helps consumers compare their health insurance and Medicare options. Then we have Pivot Health, which to me, I see it more of like a laboratory, a lab that builds specialty plans. We have a short-term health insurance, vision, dental. We have a fixed indemnity plan. We're launching a a Medicare supplement plan, a life insurance plan. Last year, we actually built, filed and put into market a product called Bridge to Medicare, which is a special health insurance for people 62 to 65. So when they're like, pre-Medicare age.
Right.
And so I look at Pivot as that laboratory of,
Nice.
Building niche specialty insurance products for consumers.
Nice.
And again, that bring value to the consumer, that have benefits like telemedicine or, cheaper price than other options, et cetera. And then why we did the Series B is that, we needed funding to really accelerate the growth of, building that broker model, basically the online to offline extension, and then really invest in technology, in data science, and really take the company to the next level. One of the things you mentioned earlier, every industry is being disrupted by internet. Travel happened, and then e-commerce,
Sure.
and then you had finance
Sure.
and banks and things like that. And now it's actually happened with insurance. Insurance companies are big and they're slow and they're regulated, and that trends. Now they're starting to go more into like, hey, we have to go direct to consumer. We have to learn how to acquire customers online. We have to be more nimble. We have to be better at data science, right? So I think those strategic, the incumbents are looking at that, and that's basically sparked a lot of interest in what they now call insurtech space. And
Nice.
You see acquisitions like Prudential acquiring Assurance for $3.5 billion, or CoverWallet being acquired by Aon, or Transact being acquired by Willis Tower Watson. So you see a lot of the incumbents, strategic guys, acquiring this technology first insurance companies, and we see healthcare.com again as a technology first insurance company that wants to provide an online first experience to the health insurance and Medicare buyer.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's no small feat to raise a round, and I know how time intensive it can be. Just in general, how long did it take you from start to finish to close a round? And also, on that note, to segue into, what do you look for in a potential investor when you're looking to partner with someone?
Yeah. So, the process is very intense.
Very,
it's
it's a
actually,
full-time job.
Before I started, I told my wife, hey, we're not taking a summer vacation, and we did not.
Yeah.
It was full throttle.
Oh, man. And just for folks listening, when you're the main operator of the company and it's time to raise capital, you better have some good people that you trust to keep the business running and humming, because it'll be your full-time job raising that capital, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's you're on every day, either working on presentations, meeting with traveling to meet, doing management presentations, doing video conferences, doing follow-ups, and that basically fills up your schedule. I mean, actually, it takes a lot of attention from the business and slows things down, and because it's a full time. And I think for us it took about 6 months to wrap things up.
So even you with your reputation of selling companies and founding them, a lot of experience, tons of wind at your back because of these acquisitions, it still took 6 months to find the right round.
Yeah,
right?
it still takes time, and I think that you have to. It takes since you're in a process, you basically have a list of people you want to talk to, and that initially takes months, and then have follow-up conversations, and you start getting a lot of offers or proposals that you have to take your time to discuss and go back, and then it's meetings, and then you basically get proposals for, let's say, a strategic M&A transaction or from a private equity firm. So you have a lot of things that you have to balance out.
For sure.
But the good thing about the process is that one, you get to talk to a lot of people in the industry. You get a lot of feedback that helps you get better. Even if you have a process that doesn't work, I feel like even if we wouldn't have done the Series B, I got a lot, of notes of basically what is it that we're not doing right, what can we improve, what can we do better. So
helps you sharpen the saw. Right?
Even just with that, the learning was pretty great. Again, a lot of commitment, a lot of time, but just the learning from the process itself, from learning what the strategics are looking for, what are they trying to acquire 2-3 years down the road, what's hot in the industry, all those things you get in this high level conversation. So even if it was a failed, let's say, process, the learnings are very valuable.
And I think it's important what you just said about the process taking 6 months, because a lot of entrepreneurs, when they go out to raise money, they think this is going to be a quick thing. So again, even you with all your experience and all the success stories, it still is a lengthy process. It takes
a lot of time, a lot of preparation, a lot of work in terms of due diligence, building data rooms, building presentations, building out models and projections. It's really full time, and it's a lot of work.
Oh, the data rooms. Oh, I just remember that whole
building
thing.
The data rooms and then again, so learning process, and then it for us, also gave us a really good direction. Like at the end, we could really decide as to, hey, this is the right path for us. We want to build this for the next 5 to 10 years. We ended up with a term sheet from basically a VC that we know very well, very friendly with rational terms, and then we were able to get back support for the term sheet from strategic players like Access Capital, who's a reinsurer, CNO. That's it's a pretty big insurance company that has been around for a while, and kind of gives us that kind of like validation of the strategics, and having our lead investor that comes from the technology world and comes from transforming companies from to state-of-the-art technology to data science and growing pretty scalable companies. So I think that at the end, we found the direction that we wanted. We were able to get the terms that we wanted. Then we engaged, and then you have another process, which is basically getting to a close with the round that you have, and basically that takes negotiating with different parties at the same time, and filling out questions and due diligence from all parties, and maybe more presentations and things like that. So it's not over. Once you get a term sheet, it's kind of like the start of another race. But then.
A lot of entrepreneurs that get a term sheet and they think it's over. It's not over. Once you get that term sheet, that term sheet needs to be signed. And I've heard cases where term sheets have been signed and the deal still falls through.
Because it's non-binding. So I think even the day before our close, we didn't know if we had a deal or no, because there is always something coming up and a question or some concern that you're trying to address. So I think until the money hits the bank, you don't have a deal done. But it feels, in our case, we were able to close the deal that we wanted with the terms that we wanted, with the group of investors that we really wanted, that we admire, that particularly in our case, we're looking to, again, become more like a data-driven company, data science, technology company, and apply that to insurance. The lead investor that we have, it's the right one for the right fit for what we're trying to build in the next 5 to 10 years. So, it's good, at the end to close the deal and be able to announce it, and now it's the fun part, which is execute and work and things like that is fun, but it's definitely not easy. We're still now you have more challenges and more responsibilities, and and you're getting out of your zone of comfort
Yeah.
on a daily basis, because the company is growing really fast. You started with 15 employees, now you're over 100, and you're trying to hire 20 to 30 more people in the next 3 months. So
Yep.
it's another scale. You get butterflies,
Sure.
because you kind of like you're being driven to the edges of your expertise
Yep.
and your experience, and hopefully it can work.
Definitely.
But we're excited and energized, but it's definitely a responsibility and a challenge.
For
but,
sure. Now you got the capital, and I know, I mean, I felt this way too, and I know other entrepreneurs, and you can relate. It's you congratulate people when you raise a big round, but sometimes it doesn't feel like a big party inside you, because now the work really starts, right? And
Right.
you have all this money that you got to try to give a 10x return to. There was a great quote, I forget who said it, but they said, congratulating an entrepreneur for raising money is like congratulating a chef for buying the ingredients. Right? You still have to go and execute and prepare a meal. Okay, you went to the supermarket, got all the stuff to cook the meal, but can you actually cook the meal and serve it and actually get happy customers?
I agree. It's a responsibility. I mean, it's not. It's definitely
actually
not,
more weight on your shoulders.
It's more weight.
Yeah.
Is you have to deal with the new investors. You have to build relationships with them. You have to learn how to work with them.
Yep.
They have their expectations. And then you have the responsibility. You buy into the responsibility that you have to be you have to basically achieve something. You have to produce for the investor. So it's definitely a lot of responsibilities on your shoulders, and it takes some time. After you close the Series B, you're like, there's some uncertainty here, feeling of uncertainty, feeling of we have again the this commitment. We have to make sure that, so it's definitely some pressure, added pressure. It's definitely not a reason to party. It's probably a reason to be happy that the process that you set out to do, it was accomplished, and it basically had a happy ending, but it's definitely not it's not the end of a road. It's just the beginning of what you wake up and work, basically.
For sure.
Next day.
And I think also an important point is to make sure you pick the right investor too. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs get into trouble because they take the first dollar that gets handed to them because they're excited to get going.
Yeah.
I've seen that backfire. You want to make sure you're partnering with the right investor. How do you think about the right investor when you look at raising capital? But you said you've worked with this person in the past. That helps a lot, right?
Yeah. I mean, that one is tough. I mean, because you never know. You kind of can build a case around the investor, from the meetings, from their mindset, from how they look at you and the team and the company and the strategy, and how involved do you think they're going to be, and you kind of build a mental model, or where the investors fit there. But you never know until you start working with them.
When the first board meeting comes around.
Exactly. When the first fire happens, you know exactly who you're dealing with.
For sure.
In my case, I feel lucky and honored, to be working with investors that we have, especially very early on, Jeff Boyd and his team. I mean, the amount of, credibility that they brought to the company, and the help and the vision, and it's invaluable. But you basically just don't see it until you basically start the work together. But you have to kind of like vet that person before. See again their mindset, their the strategy for the company. What are they getting? What are their goals as an investor? If they're like, hey, I really need to get out in a year or two, so
what's their horizon on their fund, right?
Exactly.
Like,
what's the horizon?
Yeah.
I mean, have you done before?
Yeah.
Other deals
Yeah.
are they similar to what we're doing? You've seen success in things kind of like what I'm trying to do,
Right.
So you pull basically the model, the Legos there with their expertise,
Sure.
or not because they just have money sitting there. It's gonna be a good investor, but I'm sure there are probably cases where you get a term sheet and that's the only thing you have, and you try to work with it, and but you have to do a lot of due diligence and vetting of the guy before the fact.
For sure. And when Jose and I talk about Horizon, just for our listeners that don't know, essentially, investors, venture capital firms, they raise money from other investors. That's how it works. You have GPs that run the fund, and then you have limited partners who are the passive investors essentially in the fund. The GPs raise money from LPs. And usually, what's the life cycle of a fund? It's like, sometimes 7 years, 5 years, depends on the size, obviously, right?
I think earlier stage venture capital firm, I think it's 7 to 10 years.
Right,
because
exactly.
There's no way that more growth funds are probably 5 to 6.
Right.
Private equity firms, that basically going into more established company, maybe 3 to 5.
Right. So depending on the horizon of this venture capitalist, it plays into the psyche of what kind of investor they'll be when they run your company. Because if they're at the tail end of the horizon, where they're at year 6 and they have to raise the new fund, they are pressing for exits and success stories, which may impact the way they behave and coordinate themselves in your board meeting. They might not be playing the long game anymore. They might be playing, for the next few months, right?
Right.
So I think that's an important point, as well. I've had experience, dealing with investors like that. So let's go to the other side of the table now, because you're involved both. You're an operator, but you're also an investor. You invest in other companies through People Fund, as you were mentioning. What do you look for as an investor when you're looking to make a potential investment? What are some of those initial, KPIs or elements that you're looking for that you're like, wow, I'm really interested and I'd like to talk further?
Okay, so as a disclaimer, I think I've been involved, let's say, quasi-professional investing in early stage companies for 7 years, and I still consider myself a rookie, so I'm still learning.
Sure.
So whatever I tell you right now, don't do it.
Well, I think that's a key to being a good investor is being humble and learning all the time, right?
Yeah. So, what do we look at from an investment perspective?
Yeah.
So,
what are the things that get you excited?
So we look at different things. So, in value investing, they have something called, analyzing the balance sheet. You reproduce the balance sheet, and that's how I look at things. What are the assets? The assets, the investable assets. Even though this is a Warren Buffett style, and we're definitely not in the Warren Buffett realm when we're talking about early stage companies where the risk is really high and the uncertainty, and it's a complete different game. But you have to build a discipline around it. For us, still, it's been 7 years in the making. But what basically we look for is like, what are the assets in what's what I call the intangible balance sheet of this entrepreneur, of this project. Number one, the jockey, the entrepreneur, is that a likable person, somebody that has some expertise, somebody that's, let's say, a developer, a coder, or has a team around it that can actually build what they're looking for. If somebody comes in and says, this is my idea, but, I don't know how to code, I don't know how to develop, and I need the money to build a team, we don't go there. You really need to have, somebody that has some expertise around what they're doing, but their ability to build products.
Subject matter expertise.
Right.
Key.
Number two, we also look at, who are the people involved in this project, from either a founders or also from investors, because we also look at it, hey, we're building a relationship with entrepreneur, but hey, we're also building connections with the other investors. If we co-invest with, let's say, the Leonardo DiCaprio family office, which we did in Diamond Foundry, we can build a connection there. If we, co-invest with another, very well-known VC, we're able to, again, build connections, and maybe, hey, we exchange ideas or deal flow or things like that. So there is some inherent intangible value to the network that goes around that project.
Great point.
And then the third one, which is a little bit more holistic is, what they're doing. Yes, it's going to solve a problem. Yes, there is a market, but is it something from me personally that I can learn from this? Because, at least I can get some education on what this person is doing. Like, for example, if I don't know anything about cryptocurrencies and they're doing something about cryptocurrencies, I'm like, okay, maybe I like to invest so I can educate myself. And that education, even if the project doesn't work, nobody can take it from me. So I'm investing in myself as well. So, we invested in a satellite company, and hey, we don't know anything about space. We don't know anything about satellite. We have no experience, but the team is good. The network around it is great. The people that are invested are, really great people that we build connections and dots. And then, space might be something that's going to happen in the future. I might not be able to execute on that, but I might be able to learn a little bit, and that education is not going to be taken away from me.
Right. I love that.
So that's the balance sheet that we look for. And even, when we basically feel comfortable about the balance sheet, then, we have what people call investment committee, or, in our case, we meet the partners, and then, we go ahead and make the investment. But even with that, still a speculation, because, the probabilities are against you, and, you have to be mentally prepared that maybe 80 to 90% of whatever checks you're writing are going to basically written off, and hopefully that 10th is gonna basically make it worthwhile. But number one, you have to have the discipline of saying, the process needs to keep going. You have to keep looking for these companies that pass the balance sheet test for us, or the analysis, or whatever you want to call it. Then you have to not have like a certain amount of money that you invest, so you could keep going in a n number of investments, because you have to build a portfolio. You cannot be like Warren Buffett. He can go in and put 50 billion into Apple, because Apple is not going anywhere. It's more like a value investing play. In early stage, which is what we're doing, again, failures are just going to come in.
Way more high risk.
But if you have that mindset, then you have a very long-term view of saying, look, I'm deploying this check today, and even if it comes back, it's a 7 to 10 year process. You have to look at it that way as well.
Absolutely.
And then, you enjoy the ride. You see the beautiful thing of creation happening, because you see companies again that blow up. Like it happened to us. I think like the first 2 or 3 years of People Fund, we wrote off $7 million plus, which was very painful, because it was our own capital. We, again, no LPs or funds. It was personal money. But again, it was learning and education. But 7 years later, we've got a couple of unicorns in the portfolio.
It pays for that education. You might not see it right away, the payoff. But the lesson you learned in that failure, you might have lost a few $1 million. You will get that money back on the lesson that you learned in year 7, in year 8.
Yeah, I think, any failure is a failure because you decide to be a failure. And what we say is that, that's a learning opportunity that will take you somewhere else. So, number one, if the company again failed, let's say is written off, you still have the relationship with that entrepreneur that might do something in the future. You still build the connections that you build through the network that was involved. You still got the education in that vertical that might connect the dots for you in the future for another company that comes in, or another opportunity. You're more educated. So it's still, again, it's all a process. Failure doesn't end the process. A failure in the terms of write-offs. Failure, what you want to do is survive the game. You don't want to make one bet the all or nothing bet. The half a fund in one, because but if you are disciplined, if you take a long-term view, and again, we're passionate about these companies. I mean, maybe some of the companies will solve very great problems in the future. We have investments in biotech companies that could solve some disease, or some DNA screening company that could make sure that babies are born healthier, or stuff like that. So, everything builds on each other, and I'm sure that even companies that failed, employees from that company have some idea or some IP that can be applied to something that builds on something that becomes the next big thing. So it's just a process, and I love just being part of saying I might be a little tiny piece of how technology evolves or helping that. So I see basically our investment operations as kind of like giving back, as a way. I see it like, hey, we're building this, we're investing in this company, and it might fail, but if it works, it'll create jobs, it'll make society better, it creates something out of nothing. It's just, it builds adrenaline, especially in me.
I love that. I love that answer. So many things to take away from that. And when you were talking about what you look for in a potential investment, it seemed like 80% of what you were saying is all people based. It's all, and maybe that's why you call it people fund,
because it's all about the people. Yeah.
I love it. It's all about the people involved, the team, super important. And as you mentioned, I think this is a great point that a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand. A lot of investors want to be in deals with other investors. Sometimes just as much as they want to do the deal in the company, they want to create the relationship, co-investing with another investor just to get to know them and broaden that relationship and learn from those investors too. So a lot of,
especially if you're somebody new like us, we're new in the game, and we're definitely don't have anything special from the big VCs and things like that. But we have expertise in building technology companies, in growing them, in selling them. We have expertise from as operators, and and again, that expertise can bring value to companies that we invest in, as we advise entrepreneurs, or as we work with them, or as we kind of like have discussions on solving problems, or help them with other connections and intros. So we definitely build value from bringing value other than funds to our portfolio.
I love that, man. I love that. I would like to wrap up the show. The show's called Lessons via Leaders. Everything that you've learned, all these different experiences and teachings and things like that you learn through experience. What's this one lesson that you carry with you now that maybe you don't wish you would have told yourself back when you started, but just this really meaningful lesson that you've gotten through all these years of experience running companies? What's one of those? Doesn't have to be the most important one, but what's something that's top of mind, a valuable lesson that's just come through all the failures, all the successes, all that stuff? What's top of mind?
That obstacle is the way, basically. I mean, that the failures are basically your learning opportunities. You're doing something wrong, and you have to learn and fix it and go forward. I think early on, I took every failure to heart. It was like, I can't get this done, or why is this happening to me? I'm not meant for this. I don't know what I'm doing. So that the failure was kind of like that, a rock. And at some point when I, realized that, hey, there is learnings in here. If I basically decide to look at what messages is this failure bringing me, I think that was transformational, because, that, opens your mind instead of closing your mind in that failure. And you basically transform that failure, transform the past into the next step forward. And it took me a long time to get there. And maybe now that I'm saying, it's easy, it's something you have to internalize. And to me, it was like a nirvana. Like all these things have happened, and they sucked, and they were pretty bad, and I felt pretty bad. But once you realize, wow, I learned this, and now I'm doing this differently. And if that would not have happened, I would not have been here. That, I think, is the best, the transformational learning. Every failure, there is a lesson. You just have to, take your time to listen, to understand what you were doing wrong, to grow from that failure. I mean, because, you really, success doesn't teach you much. No. I mean, I think success is probably the accumulation of all the good executions you've done, and it worked, and that's that. But the failures give you that opportunity to learn the things that you didn't know, and to me, that has been the case. Again, really hard knocks, and I've taken a lot of painful things, but without them, I wouldn't be here. So I think once you internalize that every failure is your step forward, if you decide it, if you open your mind, and if you take your time to digest and take action to maybe reflect and change the way you were doing things, or you were interacting with a certain situation, is the best learning opportunity that you can ever have. So embrace the failures, take your time to learn, keep going, be optimistic, and enjoy the ride.
I love that. I love that. It's not happening to me. It's happening for me, right?
That's right.
The mindset shift.
Yeah. But again, it's a mindset shift. You have to internalize it, and it takes time. I mean, for me, it wasn't an overnight thing. I mean, it took me years and years and years. And, one is like, oh, why didn't I knew this before? But I guess it's just a process. But once you internalize it, I mean, it becomes a superpower.
I love that, man. That's a great lesson. Thank you for sharing that. Jose Vargas, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Will. My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. If people want to get in touch with you, how could they find you?
Email is the best way, jose@peoplefund.com, or, look me up in LinkedIn. I don't do any other social media, so, just my email or LinkedIn works.
Awesome. We'll post that info in the description of this podcast. Check out Jose, check out People Fund, check out healthcare.com.
Yep.
Look him up and get in touch. Thank you again, Jose.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.